Another week, another headline, another life taken. Charlie Kirk, Melissa Hartman, two public figures, and two assassinations in just 4 months. And that doesn't even come close to naming all of the other senseless violence in our schools and in our churches and in our neighborhoods that have taken the lives of children and adults and entire families. Already in 2025, there have been more than 18,000 lives in the U.S. alone cut short by gun violence. This doesn't even come close to naming the things happening in Gaza and Ukraine. And the air is thick with fear. Our neighbors are whispering, who's next? Where is it going to happen next? How long before the violence comes closer to home? We live in a culture that is addicted to rivalry. Politics has become a blood sport. Disagreement has become dehumanization. And dehumanization, if left unchecked, will always lead to violence. Dr. King taught us that hate begets hate. That violence begets violence. That toughness begets a greater toughness. But love also begets love. So what do we do as a people of faith? What do we say in horrific moments like this? How does the Spirit grow in us when our world is on fire? Paul says the fruit of the Spirit is love, is joy, is peace. Peace. You might notice that we skipped joy this week. And we're not letting joy go. We'll come back to it next week. But as a team, we felt like it was really important that we stop for a moment and talk about what's going on in our world. And the way that we get there is through peace. In Galatians 5, moments before Paul lays out these fruit of the Spirit, he also lays out the fruit of the flesh. He says this, the works of the flesh are enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions. Do you hear it? Paul could be describing the very news feeds on most of our iPhones. He could be naming our politics. Paul could be preaching to this very moment. The flesh produces rivalry. And rivalry left to grow on its own will always produce violence. And violence, church, always destroys. But the Spirit produces peace. On the very night before Jesus' own political execution, he says, peace I leave you, peace I give you. And I don't give it to you the way that the world does, Jesus says. Because the world's peace is fragile. The silence of fear, the pause before the next shot is fired, the ceasefire with fingers still curled around the trigger. But Jesus' peace is different. His peace is not enforced silence. It's not the peace of a graveyard. It's reconciliation. It's presence. It's shalom, meaning the wholeness of all. And it's rooted in the betterment of all people. God's peace says that none of us are whole until all of us are whole. There is no world that exists anywhere and where I am better than anybody else. That is not shalom. That's brokenness. It's the kind of peace that can hang on a cross and still say, Father, forgive them. And it's also the kind of peace that breathes resurrection 3 days later. Paul says, this Christ is our peace. That he has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility. Christ tears down rivalry, gives birth to new humanity. And Paul reminds us that it's neither Jew nor Gentile, neither right nor left, neither red nor blue, but one family reconciled in love. Church, we do not serve a political party. That is a lie, and it is evil. We serve Christ. That is who we are. That is our identity as children of God. And this Hebrew word shalom is deeper than the English word that we hold for peace because it embodies this idea of wholeness, of harmony, of the flourishing of all. Not just us, but creation included. And rivalry tells a different story. Rivalry says, I'm going to win and you're going to lose. But shalom reminds us that it's only when we both flourish that we survive. And when one of us doesn't, the other doesn't. Rivalry sharpens our swords, but shalom beats those swords into plowshares. Rivalry puts crosshairs on our enemy, and shalom lays down arms and sets up tables. Rivalry loves to hoard power, to take on as much power as it can, but shalom says we are not whole until all of us share power equally. Rivalry shouts into the silence, but shalom sits and listens to understand. Rivalry breaks community, but shalom weaves it into our lives. Rivalry thrives in our fear. The more fear, the better. But shalom only grows in love, where fear can't live. Rivalry makes enemies out of us. But shalom makes us neighbors. Hear me, church. The violence that we have witnessed over the last few months, and this week specifically, is not inevitable. It is curated. It is discipled. And the only thing that can interrupt the discipleship of rivalry is a deeper rooting in the spirit that is love. We have to name it. The violence that we've witnessed in our schools and in shootings and all of those things, it is not random. It is the bitter fruit of a culture that is discipled in rivalry. It is the flesh having its way. And it's the temptation, even in us, to respond in kind. See, fear makes us withdraw and pull back from those of difference. Anger makes us lash out. Suspicion makes us divide, but the Spirit calls us to something else. So what does this peace that refuses violence look like here and now? I think first it looks like presence over rivalry. We have to be the people who are sitting at the table with people across whatever divide we see separates us. The people of God aren't doing that. There is no one left to do it. We stand in the gap. We have to have conversations, and not just to get them to agree with you. We have to have conversations seeking understanding. How do we really understand the heart of somebody that's different? What is God trying to teach me through that person who I despise? I think it also looks like we have to tell the truth with love. Peace is not denial. It names violence for what it is, but it refuses to answer violence with violence. In a world of exclusion, we're called to be people of hospitality, to set a longer table, to invite your neighbor that you most disagree with. But it also looks like forgiveness and repair. Because we will be wronged. If you haven't been wronged yet in your life, hold on, it's going to come. That is as sure as birth and dying. You're going to be wronged. But peace does not mean pretending it didn't happen. It means working for healing rather than revenge. It means understanding that when somebody's wronged me, until that is made right, neither of us are good. Neither of us are whole. That the world is fractured until we bridge that divide. And it is hard work, church. And guess what? Very few people are doing it. Very few people. But the work also looks like justice making. Because peace without justice is a lie. Shalom requires equity and safety and dignity for all people. The moment that one person is separated out, we have no shalom. It doesn't exist. And that requires justice work. It requires naming things when I've broken relationship with somebody else. It's choosing to be in relationship instead of being right. Church, your rightness gets you nowhere except feeling good and comfortable and alone. Make no mistakes, this is not safe work. Peacemakers historically are not applauded. They're often mocked, marginalized, and even targeted. But didn't Jesus tell us, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God? Peace is costly. But the alternative is more rivalry, more blood, more death. It costs us everything. So what would it look like for a church to live in this peace? On the morning of October 2nd, 2006, in Nickel Mines, Pennsylvania, a small Amish schoolhouse became the site of an unthinkable tragedy. A man entered the one-room schoolhouse armed and angry And he sent the boys and the adults outside, and then he bound up 10 young Amish women and girls and opened fire on them. 5 were killed, and 5 were wounded. And like this week, the nation gasped. How could this happen in such a quiet, simple, seemingly sheltered place where violence doesn't usually enter their world? And reporters descended, and politicians offered their thoughts and prayers, and the whole world watched the grief of a community that had lost its children. But then something amazing happened. Within hours, not days, hours, members of this Amish community reached out to the shooter's family. They went to the widow's home to offer comfort. They brought her food. They sat with her. One Amish man held the killer's father in his arm and whispered, "We forgive you." Forgiveness. Not the denial of evil. Not the erasure of grief. But a refusal to let hate have the last word. And as the Amish buried their daughters side by side, they walked to the funeral plot of the man who murdered them to bear witness to mercy in the face of violence. And the world called it shocking. But the Amish called it obedience. They believed Jesus when he said, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." This is what shalom looks like in flesh and blood. It doesn't pretend that evil is not real. It stares evil in the face and says, "We choose a different way." It lays down rivalry. It refuses revenge. It says, even here in the shadow of death, Christ is our peace. Forgiveness, given that quickly, is not improvised. It's cultivated. It's the fruit of decades of living in shalom together. The only way our Amish brothers and sisters could have made this happen was because the fruit of the Spirit of peace was already at root in them. They had practiced peace for years, for generations, for decades, living into the practices of peace. Years of practicing shalom as a community gave them the fortitude to respond differently in the midst of profound human loss. Church, we are all being discipled. And our world is being discipled by rivalry, by othering, by separation. And we are bearing the fruit of that. And the world is longing to eat the fruit that brings life, not death. Imagine a community that refuses to answer violence with violence. Imagine a people so rooted in love that rivalry can't even find oxygen among them. Imagine tables stretched long, enemies breaking bread together, walls tumbling down. This is not naive. This is resurrection. This is the Spirit's fruit. This is Christ alive in us. And in a world where shots are fired in public squares, maybe the most radical witness we can give is simply to be a people of peace. Not fragile peace, not fearful peace, but Spirit-grown, Christ-shaped, resurrection-breathed shalom. Right here, right now, in our very own neighborhoods. A church who refuses to give rivalry oxygen and says, we will be different in this world. because the world needs our fruit. Please pray with me. God, we are grieved. We long for your peace in a world that is bearing the fruit of brokenness. Help us to tap into your Spirit, to root ourselves deeply in that place so that your peace can flow through our veins.